Okay, so we went over methods, and now we can go over what the concepts are left. For each loop, I said I would cover that because we made an array before. So let's just create an array again. So we have an integer array. And let's call this another array. Doesn't matter what it's called. And then in our start method, just move these down here. We can define this to be an array of 10 elements. And now let's create a for loop. So int index is 0. Termination condition, while index is less than the array's length, let's add 1 to the index so that it goes through them. And then we're going to populate this array, so get the current index with some values. For now, we're just going to get the index value. So this goes from 0 to 9, and then 0 to 9 gets set into here, so we get 10 elements starting from 0, ending at 9. And as I mentioned before, we can print out the things in this for loop. But what if we wanted to do it outside of the for loop, all at once? Your first guess may be to write another for loop, but there's another loop called Foreach, and that's pretty much a shorthand for printing out loads of things in a list. So you write for each, and in the brackets you could say number, for each number in our array, like this. And you have to specify the data type here. So let's say for each int number, so this is a variable, in our array, let's print out those numbers. And that's all it is. It just grabs everything and then prints it all out. So that's a shorthand for writing a whole for loop and doing things that way. So let's comment these out, just so we've got an idea. You comment by writing 2 of these things here, these little dashes, so that we can only print this, so that nothing's in the way. Save it, go back to Unity, wait for it to recompile, and when we click play, it will go from 0 to 9, like this. Those are all the loops you need to concern yourself with. For, do, while, and for each. Yeah, don't think there's any others that you need to concern yourself with. Those are pretty much all of them. There's one more called recursion, which is loop-like, but it's not a loop. But we'll not bother with that just yet. Okie dokie. 2D arrays. Okay, that's a good idea. With this normal array, it's just one-dimensional. If we were to open Excel, I can give you a visual representation of what this looks like. A one-dimensional array is like this. So if it's an array of 10 elements, whoops. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's our array here. So if we do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's what a one-dimensional array looks like. A list of variables, that's all it is. If we have a two-dimensional array, that means we don't just have a row here, we have multiple rows, which in turn gives you multiple columns. So you're having a grid of stuff instead of just one thing here. And in Unity, well, in C#, we denote that with a comma in here. So remember before, this means one container of something. Now we want at least 2 pathways to go in. Which of course means we can't just have one single number here to give it a max value. We need to specify the max values of 2 dimensions, so the rows and the columns. For the time being, let's say we've got 10 rows and 10 columns. So this looks like this, but then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's like that. And then, you know, the first element doesn't have anything in it yet, because we need to now populate it. Right, so we used one for loop to go through a one-dimensional array, but now that we've got 2 dimensions, we need to use 2 for loops, one nested within the other, and I'll show you how to do that. Very similar way to how you did it before. So let's call this int column, column, and then make it equal 0. That's our starting position. While column is less than another array dot get length this time, because we need to specify the row or the column rather than just the entire length. And then in here we're going to put number 1, and we're going to copy that and place it here and put the number 0. So 0 means this one, the row, and 1 means this one here, which is the column. So 2 dimensions instead of 1. Put a semicolon, and then we're going to go one at a time through the columns. Open and close the curly braces. So now we've got this this double for loop structure here. Now to fill, oops. Sorry, I pulled out my headphones. To fill this array, to populate it with something, we just add it into here really. So another array, and in our index, because we're doing rows and columns, we can pass in the first for loop integer, and then the second one, so comma, column. So at the beginning, they're both 0, so the 0th row, the 0th column, and let's make that equal to the index times the column, like that. So 0 times 0 is going to be 0, but that's fine. Save it. One important thing to note here is that for loops have to finish unless you break out before the other one can. So this index starts at 0, it's going to go to here, column is going to start at 0, and then it's going to do this 10 times because we have 10 columns. And then once that's done, it's going to go back to this first for loop. Index is going to be set to 1, and then it's going to go into for loop again. Column's going to be 0 because it's a fresh loop, and it's going to do this 10 times again. And then it's going to go back round. Index is going to go to 2, and then this inner loop is going to do 10 times again, and so on, all the way until index is finally finished. So as you can see, it's not just a linear thing anymore. This for loop, this inner one, happens loads of times, happens 100 times in comparison to just the 10 of the outer one. So yeah, as your number of elements increases, as does the number of iterations you have to do with this sort of for loop structure. So be careful, don't go crazy and have loads and loads of things to iterate through. It'll take you all year. So yeah, something to be aware of. And in the end though, we'll populate the whole thing. So all of these should have values. And let's say we want to print out this. So another array, index, column, and then semicolon. We don't want to print a million times. Let's actually, yeah, let's do that. Save it, go back to Unity, let's clear this. Let's not collapse. Actually, let's do collapse, okay. Now let's click play. Let's see what happens. So we've got 0, which happens 19 times. Then we have 1 that happens once, 2 that happens twice, and so on. So it goes from 1 to 10, 12, 14, 16, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's really doing the same loops over and over again, multiple times, until the loop stops. But the good thing is that we've populated our array fully with stuff, and then we can loop through it. So just as we did before when we wanted to loop through our array to search for something. If we wanted to do that in a 2D array, we need 2 for loops again. So 2D arrays are really expensive. If you really need to use them for something, of course, do that. But use them sparingly. Yeah, quite convoluted. But that's how you do it. You have one extra step to enter your columns rather than just entering, for the rows. So yeah.